So yeah, let's get started with the quiz. I know there's only two of us, but I don't know. Don't get. Okay. There we go. The last person joined. That's cool. Anyway, let's jump in. Good luck, guys. Don't take it too seriously. It's obviously just fun. Ooh. Okay, cool. Don't know what went on there. There you go. Okay, first question. You want to preserve the value of a variable across page postbacks, but only needed for the current page. Which form of state management is required? This one's pretty tough. These questions are pretty difficult because you can already actually answer most of the questions from chapter 4. Although, I mean, maybe this one's not too bad. If you remember our discussion a little bit. But no, this is tough. I think they get easier than this one in this quiz. But that's why these are good to do, because I can explain again. Okay, we had an interesting split there. It is view state. Okay, but let's discuss each one. So I think the two most interesting answers are probably view state and session state. So it's not query string. The reason it's not query string is because that's not preserved across page postbacks, right? Because the URL changes each time. The session answer is interesting, but remember that the session states can store things for all of the pages in your website. And here it says you only need it for the current page. The application state stores things that are specific to the application, right, as a whole. So like the number of users on the application would be an application state variable, but the number of views that you have specifically would be something specific to your state. So like the application state is for variables that are important for the application as a whole. So yeah, view states is the answer here. Nicely done to whoever got that, but I know this one was difficult. This one was definitely difficult. You have to revise those state management questions just before the exam because it can be difficult to remember. Lots of subtleties. You are storing the number of users currently engaged with particular pages on your site. Which form of state management is appropriate? Okay, don't let this throw you off. So the number of users currently engaged with parts of your site. So which form of state management would be useful where? Would we want to store this for every single user? But let's see. Interesting split, interesting split. No, so why would we say session state here? I guess because that is preserved across different pages, maybe is the logic. I'm not sure if we should read into this too much. But yeah, it's application state because the number of users engaging with particular pages on your site is kind of the same as the number of users engaging with your site. If we were storing this in a session variable, so let me explain it this way. There's one session for every single user, okay? So would you store the number of users engaging with a particular page for every single user, right? Because let's say there were 100 people in a particular Mentimeter quiz, okay? Would you store that number 100 times? Because if you stored it in a session state, because each user has their own session identified by their session ID, then every single user would store that number 100. But you see that that number is specific to the application. There's 100 people engaging with that Mentimeter quiz. You only need to store that number 100 once, okay? And the same logic for the cookie. Remember, a cookie is just what we call a session when it's saved on the user's machine, basically. Okay. You want to perform some post-processing after a page request has been handled completely. Which event handler in the page lifecycle should you use? So after the request has been handled completely, which event would we attach that to? So this is after the request has been handled. This one's not too bad, I don't think. If we just look at the names. So after it's been handled completely. Basically like cleaning up. Where would we clean up our memory, close some database connections, something like that. Ah, also another split. Okay, no, you know what? Render is fair. So pre-render is the last step before render. You wouldn't attach things to render specifically though. So remember the event after render, like pre-render is the final warning for you to do something. Okay. Unload is the final step. It's after the request has been handled completely. Okay. Unload. And remember, we did see that. So that's the last possible event that you could do anything. Pre-render is the last time you can edit the response. But this is saying after a page request has been handled completely. Okay. Yo, these questions are tough. The user must be able to view their personal data on every page of your web application in a secure way. Which form of state management is ideal? Remember that you are being asked this as a developer, okay? Not as a user. Okay, one person got it. So application state. So this is saying the user must be able to view their personal data. Remember, the application state is storing things specific to the application as a whole, like the number of users accessing the website. Okay, so you wouldn't store personal data in the application state because personal data is not specific to the application as a whole. A query string is not secure. You guys know that. You can read the query string, right? Like you can read a query string, like we can see over here. If I click like library and then I click login. Welcome, Chico. So you can see, ooh, that's weird. There you go. So you can see over there, that's a query string. It's saying the next URL that I'll be going to. Question mark next. Next is the name of our query string. And the string that it is storing is the /library/ whatever, okay? So that's saying where I'm going. You can see that that's not how you would not store secure data this way, right? Like if that was showing my personal data, like my bank account details or something, I would not be happy about that. That's not secure. A query string is definitely not secure. So yeah, session is correct here because this is preserved across all of the pages of the application and it's secure because it's on the server. So yeah. You want to make changes to page properties before the controls are initialized. Which event handler in the page lifecycle is appropriate? Yo, these really didn't get any easier. This one's tough as well. But I guess it's good to be exposed to these questions, even if they're really difficult and scary. Because if we did the quiz again now from the beginning, you would get them all right. You want to make changes to page properties before they're initialized. I think that's not so bad. Before they're initialized, when they would, yes. Nice, guys, nice, okay, cool. I mean, the name of the events kind of made sense here, right? So the initialized stage of the application lifecycle, remember initialized, we want to do it before that step, right? Because obviously in the initialized step is where things are initialized. So we want to do something before that step. So that would be pre-initialized, pre-init. Okay, cool. Nicely done. Okay, not too bad. Okay, everyone got at least one, so that's super good. Bill, you got 2. Nicely done. It was a tough quiz, guys, so don't feel bad. And yeah, nicely done. It's good to be exposed to these questions, even if they do seem ridiculously difficult. Okay, cool. And I see Sejo has joined as well. That's great. Welcome, guys. Let's get into today's lecture. I actually have like another little quiz. This one should be substantially easier, but this one's in the slides. Okay, so I'll be asking you the questions in the chat. Oh, that's interesting. So the side thing is opening now. Cool. Huh. Okay. Let's go. So the course is fairly interesting in this way in that you cover so many different things. So like this should give you a fairly decent idea of which part of the tech industry you're interested in. Because just to give you like a brief overview. So in chapter 1, we covered like some basic ideas of programming. In chapter 2, we covered object-oriented programming. In chapter 3, we covered sort of general software developments and like the theory, some of the theory behind like data structures and how we develop software. In chapter 4, we covered web development. And now in this chapter, we're covering sort of desktop developments. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I mean like all of these apps that run on your desktop, like the Steam app or the Epic Games app, or even super simple apps like Calculator over here. Like how was this created? How would we create something like this? Because obviously this is not a website, which we've learned to create, but it is an important kind of app. Lots of apps exist in this way. And in fact, the Google Chrome app that I'm in currently, the Zoom app, the Visual Studio app, all of these things are desktop applications. So how are those created? For Windows, at least. So yeah, desktop applications. We need to discuss some sort of distinctions about these. So how we create desktop applications for Windows is they're called Windows Form applications, okay? And essentially they're defined by the visual interfaces that they contain. What do I mean by a visual interface? Some of you guys might be more familiar with another term from gaming perhaps, where we call it a graphical user interface, a GUI. But whatever you want to call it, so you can call it a visual interface, that's what they call it in this course. But they can also be called graphical user interfaces. Means the same thing, okay? The other kind of application we have is a TUI, a textual user interface. And this is kind of what we've been working with like Rex Tester and stuff like that. Like Rex Tester is more of a TUI interface, but the best place to see a TUI, like sort of how the best way to visualize it is this thing over here, right? So there are applications running in this TUI. So you can see it's only text. It's like one large text file is basically what I'm editing here. It's basically like a text file. And yeah, but there are applications. Like for example, I can say ping google.com, okay? And then it'll ping Google. It'll tell me what the delay is, make sure that I'm connected to the internet, that kind of thing. It'll tell me my latency to connect to Google's server. I can also ping like other websites, okay? And you can see what like the latency of all of these is. So yeah, pretty standard stuff that. And yeah, so it is a desktop application. You can see it's running on my desktop, but it doesn't have a visual interface. So these are the two kinds of applications we can deal with. Desktop applications that have visual interfaces and desktop applications that have textual interfaces, okay? So what do we call this? If it has a visual interface and it's running on Windows, then we call it a Windows form, okay? Windows forms are desktop applications that have visual interfaces. If they're desktop applications that only have a textual user interface running on Windows, then we call them console-based applications. Why do we call them console-based applications? Because they run in this command prompt. And another way of saying command prompt is console, okay? This is a console. That's what we call it, a console. Okay, cool. So what are the advantages? So you could picture like we've seen web services and web applications, and there are definitely people in the world who think that we should basically only create those, okay? That we can just permanently connect to the internet for all of our application needs. We don't have to create any of these like native applications. And I mean, in a way, it does seem fairly sensible. Like we can see we can do sort of everything through websites now. We don't actually have to, like you could picture once upon a time, I might have used like PowerPoint or whatever to create these slides, but now I can just use this web application that Google created, right? I don't need to install anything on my computer other than like some browser, and I just access their websites and I get all the functionality of PowerPoint pretty much. but there are still advantages of doing things in desktop applications. And you guys have probably noticed this yourselves. Having to do everything through a website, like on your cell phone or on a desktop or on a laptop, you don't necessarily get the same experience, right? Like usually if it's installed on your own system, they integrate with the operating system really nicely. So the experience is just smoother, it's faster, okay? Number two, and this is a big thing, they can run without access to the internet, right? If I disconnect from the internet, I can still create my PowerPoint slides, but I can't create my Google slides. Well, nowadays you actually can do that with Chrome, but like hypothetically. And the next thing is they can communicate with devices such as printers and scanners. This is less of a thing now today because browsers are able to communicate with printers and scanners. But historically, and even today to a certain extent, it's very difficult to get a website to communicate with a printer or a scanner or any local device, really. Okay. Anyway, so that was just an intro of what we're covering in chapter 5. And what's nice about this chapter is that you actually already know a lot of it from previous parts of the course. So I was going through the knowledge assessments at the end of chapter 5, and here are some questions. So these questions are from the end of chapter 5, okay? So we haven't covered chapter 5 yet, but I want to gauge like how well you guys could maybe do at some of these questions. So here's one question that's from the end of chapter 5. You are developing a Windows form application that responds to mouse events. When the mouse moves, you need to invoke the method form1_handle_mouse. Any code that you write should not affect any existing event handling code. Which statement should you use to attach the events handler to the event? Okay, so we want to attach the event handler to this, to the events, okay? So which code would I use to do this? When the mouse moves, I must call the method called form1_handle_mouse. Which code would we use for that, guys? Do any of you know? Do we have any ideas? Let's discuss this one. I'll give you guys some time, and if no one gets it, then we can sort of discuss it. So we sort of learned this in chapter 2. How do we attach things to an event? Would be the first part that this question is asking you about. How do we attach things to an event? How do we add things to an event? And the next part of this question, okay, so I've got 2 suggestions so far. Someone suggested B and someone suggested D. Okay, I think it's cool that we can narrow it down to those 2 options immediately, right? So what we are linking to is mouse movement, right? So mouse down would actually be a click, right? Like if I actually click something, that would be a mouse down event, but moving the mouse would be linked to mouse move. So I agree, A is wrong because it says this dot mouse down, C is wrong because it says this dot mouse down. So we've reduced it to B or D. Now the next thing, so what else is different here for B and D? The only difference is that D has this plus equals and B has this equals. Okay. So B has no plus and D has plus equals. Okay. So if we think back to chapter 2, how did we add things to events, guys? How did we add things to events? And remember, when you're asked this kind of question, when you're asked to add something to an event handler, okay, and particularly it says, so there's lots of things that sort of give it away. So I'll give you a few. So number 1, the fact is that one way you can say this, so they say attach the event handler to the event. So we're attaching the event handler to the event. But the other way of saying this is to add the event handler to the event. So when you hear the word add, you should immediately be thinking plus, okay? Should immediately be thinking plus. The second thing, just understand it. So any code that you write should not affect any existing event handling code. If I say this dot mouse move equals form1_handle_mouse, then anything that I previously linked to mouse move, so you can imagine, let's say just before this, I linked handle, let's say there's something you can drag, like a rectangle that you can drag across the screen when you move your mouse. So I linked form1_drag rectangle to mouse move before I ran this code. If I say equals, then anything that I previously attached to mouse move would be overwritten. So you see it says any code that you write should not affect any existing event handling code. That means you must use the plus equals, because any new method that you add will not overwrite the previous methods that you added to mouse move. Okay, so we discussed this for long, but in general, just remember, guys, when you're adding an event to something, we always use plus equals. All the way since chapter 2, you always use plus equals, but we'll go into more detail on this in chapter 5. But nice, I'm glad that we could at least narrow it down. So that's not the only question that I think you guys should have a good chance of answering. Here's another. So you are extending an existing Windows application. You would like to create a new form that derives its visual characteristics from a previously created form. Which technique should you use to create the new form? So we want to derive some characteristics from something we previously created. Which technique would we use for this, guys? So remember, you're only technically supposed to know this at the end of chapter 5, but let's see what you guys say. So I want to derive some visual characteristics from a form that I previously created. Which option would we use? Okay, interesting bet. Do we have to go that complicated, Yusuf, though? Let's see. Okay. So I've again received 2 different suggestions. Both of them fairly reasonable, I think. Okay, okay. Ooh, another answer. Okay, interesting. So cool. Let's discuss each of these options. And for no particular reason, I'm going to start at the bottom. Okay, so what would abstraction be? Visual abstraction be? You guys know abstraction from chapter 2. We've heard all of these 4 words before. The only difference now is they have visual in front of their names, right? So visual abstraction, it would be like labeling a class abstract and like defining certain properties without setting them would be something like that, I guess, in a visual sense. But in general, like you're not going to be using visual abstraction. Visual encapsulation has to do with security, right? Security. So this is saying we would like to create a new form that derives its visual characteristics from a previous form. So we have a previous form and we'd want to derive its characteristics into a new form. That has nothing to do with protecting the visual characteristics, right? Hey, okay. So visual polymorphism, okay. Interesting. So that would be like you have one visual characteristic, but you want to like slightly change it in a lot of different ways. I mean, perhaps that could be useful. But on a basic level, what this is defining is definitely visual inheritance. Okay, so yeah, that's A. We have a previously created form and we just want to derive it. Okay, so well done, Chris and Yusuf. You guys got it. Nicely done. Okay. Last question. So this is another question that technically you should only know by the end of chapter 5. You are developing an application that will be run from the command line. Which of the following methods would you use for output to the command line, or to output for the command line? To output to the command line might be better, but whatever. Which of these methods would I use to output to the command line? So if I'm in a console-based application, how would I output? That's an interesting answer. Okay. Again, I got 2 answers, which surprises me. So remember, so there's, let's wait a bit. So let's think about this. We're outputting to the command line. Okay. Outputting to the command line. No, Yusuf, don't second guess yourself. Okay, I'll reveal now. Okay, so it is console.write, guys. And we've used console.write a lot. Okay, well done, Tejo, you got it. Okay, so let's explain this. So if I were writing, so remember, command line, console, All of these things mean the same. It means this thing, basically. And in Rex Tester, the thing we have at the bottom is just this, basically, okay? Rex Tester is just simulating this on a website, okay? That's all it's doing. So how did we output things in Rex Tester? We would say like console.write, right? So console.write is correct here. Console.read is how you would read things from the command line, right? That's how you would take input from the command line. File.read and file.write, you've never even worked with this before, but I think you guys probably have an intuition about what this would be used for, right? File.read would be used to read things from a file. File.write would be used to write things to a file. So like instead of reading and writing from console, we can also read and write from files, right? Makes sense. And that basically comes down to the fact that this whole console here, command prompts, you can basically read this as one long file, right? It's just a text file. You can see, like, I could just copy paste this into a text file, right? Literally. So it's the same as just writing to a text file, right? That's what I'm doing here. I'm basically typing in a text file. It's slightly more dynamic than a text file, obviously, because like I can hit enter to that, but actually that's not more dynamic, right? I can hit enter to add new lines to the text file, right? It's whatever. It's just a text file, basically. A more fancy text file. Cool, so those are 3 questions that you should technically only know the answer to at the end of chapter 5. A lot of them you'll know now already though. And so yeah, let's jump into actual chapter 5 and get started on this. Let me just check. Okay, cool, we've still got a lot of time. We did a pretty long introduction there, but that's okay. Okay, let me just tell you where, oh, I need to, okay, I must do that. I'll share the chapter 5 PDF with you guys after the lecture. It's annoying that we have to split them up for like copyright reasons, yay. Cool, but let's just go ahead and create our own super simple Windows Form application to jump into this. Okay, so how do we create a Windows Form application? That's the main sort of part of this. How do we create one of these desktop applications? So in order to create a Windows Form application, we're going to use something called the Windows Form Designer, okay? If any of you have ever used like WordPress or whatever to create a website or anything like that, it's very similar to that. It's just drag and drop. It makes things super easy. And you'll see it now, like even if you've never worked with this stuff before, it'll just make sense. It's like super easy to design the basics of a form application. Obviously, adding those little small features and improving the design a little bit, that's where it gets super complicated. But yeah, it's not too bad. So let's start with that. Let me show you this drag and drop thing. Let me show you what they mean by Windows Form Designer. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm jumping over to Visual Studio 2019, which is totally free, guys. As I mentioned earlier, you can just download it from the Visual Studio website, the community edition, they call it. So I'm going to hit create new project. And actually, if you have a student, like a university email account, you can get the free pro version of it as well, which is quite nice. So what I'm going to do is design a Windows Forms app, okay? A Windows Form app using C#. So you can see it says C#. There's also a Visual Basic version, as usual. We're using C#. Okay, so I'm going to hit next on that. We're creating a Windows Form app. I'll call it, Windows Forms app 1. That's a bit boring. Let's call it birthday app, because that's what we'll be using it for. I'm going to call this Saturday Forms. Okay, something like that. Okay, and just make sure to save it in the correct place so that I'll be able to find it later. There we go. Cool. Create. Okay, so that's creating. It does take a little while, but yeah, you'll see that this will actually give us the basic structure of a Windows Forms app immediately, and it's super easy to customize and to work with. But as usual, actually, like the front end side of things, making the design really sort of clean and nice, that's what's difficult about designing an app. The sort of logic behind it, until you get to like super complicated stuff about how you scale to multiple users and stuff like that, how you handle disconnects, how you handle security, that kind of thing. Until you get to that kind of scale, the actual difficult thing is designing an app that looks good. But we'll see at the very least, we'll learn to handle the functionality, if not handling how good it looks, if that makes sense. Creating project. It does take a little while the first time we create a project each day. Okay, so who must I remember to add to the register in the break? I must add Chico and Sejo. Okay, that's chilled. Oof, it's taking particularly long today. Okay, finally finished. All right, so this is what it gives me. Okay, guys, that's it. That's my form. Nothing too special yet, I think you can agree. So you can see it's given me like this basic, it looks kind of like, I don't even know if you guys are old enough to remember, but like that's kind of like this Windows XP sort of design or whatever, or like Windows 7 design, but you'll guys notice I'm on Windows 10. So like things look a little bit different over here. So bear that in mind. That's fairly interesting that it's using this older sort of style so far, before I open it at least. And you can also notice, and I want you guys to take note of this, the size that it gave me. So this is the default size of a Windows form. Okay, you see it's that default size. So as soon as I created a new Windows form, this is the size it gave me. I can change the size of the form. So I'm going to make it smaller like that. Okay, but bear in mind what it was. So by default, it was this size. Okay, and I changed it to like that size. Okay, cool. And I did tell you that this was basically drag and drop. That's how these applications work. And that's true. I wasn't lying to you guys. You can see I've got a whole bunch of options over here. We've got containers, we've got menus, we've got things that will handle printing, like for printing a specific document, stuff like that. We've got a whole bunch of stuff on the right here, okay? We're gonna create a simple application where you'll pick a date, and if it's one of our birthdays, so we'll get all of our birthdays. If it's one of our birthdays, then the app is gonna wish us happy birthday. Okay, that's the app we're gonna create. So I'm gonna drag over a date time picker over here, and I'm just gonna put it in like the middle of the app so that we have some basic styling. Ooh, okay, let me put it so that it's centered. There we go. Okay, so that's a date time picker. Okay, a date time picker. The other thing we'll need is a little label that if it's one of our birthdays, it will say happy birthday and then your name. If it's not one of our birthdays, then it's just gonna say the date, okay, whatever date it is. So in order to display like some text, we're gonna need a label, okay, a label. So there you go, we've got a label. Okay, like so, I'll put it like there. We won't care too much about the styling. Okay. So there we go. That's how you design an application. We could drag and drop more things onto it. You can picture. And now you can see, so if I build this project, so I'm just going to build it. Okay, so that's just going to compile it, translate it into a language that the computer understands. So you can see it says build started. It always takes a little while to build the application for like the first time, like after the computer switches on and stuff. Okay, it finished building. I'm going to hit start to like open up the application. So it's going to open up now. And okay, here's our app. So what do you guys notice immediately? Is there any interesting things you can point out about our little app here?
It shows the date.
Yeah, it does. That is the current date. We didn't program it to do that, which is cool. And you can see I can select new dates, right? I can select new dates, but it doesn't do anything yet, right? Like the application isn't actually doing anything because we haven't programmed anything yet. All we did was drag and drop a date time picker and a label. It doesn't know how these things are supposed to be linked yet, so we have to handle that. But like even more obviously than that, you can see that even though the application inside the designer is using like an older Windows style, like XP or Windows 7 or something, the form itself has Windows 10's design. You see that? So that's quite cool. It's reverse compatible. It's reverse compatible. Whatever version of Windows you run this on, it's going to inherit the design style of that Windows. Okay. But yeah, anyway, so that's our basic Windows form app. We're going to customize it a little bit more. But that's the first step. So we use the Windows Form Designer to like sort of create the layout of our application. Okay, but now what we want is actual functionality. Okay, so how do we get that functionality? Well, what we need is events, right? So the user will perform some actions, some inputs, and when the user does a certain thing, a certain event will be triggered. And I can link things to those events, okay? So you guys can notice like events are very common in every single part of application development, whether it's web applications, mobile applications, or desktop applications. And by the way, mobile applications work exactly in this way. Okay, like mobile applications work in the exact same way as desktop applications, basically. Very, very similar ideas. Most things are events. So cool. So what we want to happen, right, is when you click this, so like what would be an example of an event? If the value inside the date time picker changes, so like if it changes from the 24th of October to the 21st, for example, that should trigger an event, okay? The date that I have selected has changed. So we must do something with that, okay? The date has changed. So when the date changes, that will trigger a certain event, okay? So you see the user, that's me, I do something, I click a date, and then an event must be triggered, okay? Cool. So how will we do that? How we link an event to a particular thing in a Windows form is also super easy. It's much easier than programming it yourself in like a console application. You just get the item that you want to link the event to. So we mouse over it. So you see I've selected the date time picker. That's the event that I want to link to. And you just double click it. There we go. So now you can see it's created this method, private void datetime picker one value changed, underscore value changed. Okay. So I've now linked something to that event. Now I do want to show you. So this makes it look fairly abstract, like what is actually going on here. But I do want you guys to know that this isn't doing anything special really. Like you could program this yourself. Here it is. So here's the line that added. By double clicking, it just added this line to the code. Okay, it says this dot datetime picker one. So datetime picker one is this thing over here. This is datetime picker one, the thing we dragged on. This dot datetime picker one dot value changed. So that's the event of when the value inside the datetime picker changes. Plus equals, so it's adding to that event. Plus equals this dot datetime picker one underscore value changed, which is just the name of the method we have over here, is datetime picker one underscore value changed. And I could change this, guys. What you might be more familiar with from sort of chapter 2 would be something like this, on value changed. Like if we just made it ourselves. If we just made the method ourselves, on value changed, something like that. And then I just renamed this method over here to on value changed, something like that. Okay. Let me remove that. Okay, I can do that. So you see, I've just edited the code manually myself. So I changed the method's name to on value changed, and you can see it's on value changed over there. And so it's not complaining. That works. Okay, that works. So I can edit it myself as well, how we're more familiar with events. Okay, that's how we used events. Okay, so there we go. So that'll work now. And so now when the value changes, let's just do a basic thing. Let's just make it so that the label value changes when the thing changes. So let me ask you this. Actually, okay, let's go into properties. In the code, how am I going to reference this label over here? How will I reference that label over here? What do you think the name of that label is inside the code? So the datetime picker was called datetime picker one, right? So I can show you that over here. If I go to the properties of datetime picker one, you can see it's called datetime picker one. And yeah, that's its name. You see datetime picker one. That's why it's referenced in the code as datetime picker one. How will I reference this label over here, guys? Can anyone tell me? What am I going to type? So I want to change the text value of that label. How am I going to reference it? Nice, Chris. Yeah, you're awake. So we can say label one, and you can see it'll even autocomplete for me. Label one. Okay, label one dot. We want to change the text inside label one. We want to change the text inside label 1. And I want to set it to, actually, let's for now just set it to dates changed. Date changed, okay? That's all we're going to do. It's just going to set to date changed. Okay, there you go. So let's just run this now. Okay. So you see initially it's label 1. I'm going to change the date. Date changed. Okay, see it says date changed. Good start, right? Okay, good start. Cool. So this is working. It's coming to this method when the value of the date time picker changes. But we want to change it to either the date or to the, to say happy birthday, whichever one of our birthdays it is. Okay. So how are we going to do that? The first thing we're going to do is just, we must just check out how exactly the date is formatted. Okay, so what we're going to go and fetch, we're going to fetch date time picker 1 dot value dot to long date string. Okay, we're going to say to long date string. To long date string. So all this will do, you can see it gives me a little blurb, converts the value of the current date time to its equivalent long date string representation. So you guys might not know what a long date string is yet, but you will soon, okay? So all it means is like the full sort of English representation of the date. So I'll show you that now. So I'm going to click run. I'm going to change the date to the 13th, and you can see it says 13th of October, comma, 2020. That's formatting the date as a long date string. Okay, so now we can use that. So let's add all our birthdays. So guys, how would I do this? What statements am I going to use? So it's one of our birthdays. We select one of our birthdays. How do I check if it's one of our birthdays? How do I check if it's one of our birthdays? Does anyone have any ideas? What statement will I use to check if it's one of our birthdays? So I'm going to save this in string date. How am I going to check if date is one of our birthdays? Which statement that we've learned am I going to use? It's kind of like a condition, right? I need to check if the date is equal to something. How will I do it, guys? If, that's not a bad suggestion, Chris, but you can imagine there's lots of us, right? Or, well, a fair amount of us, 6 of us. So I would have to use 6 if statements plus another one, or like an else statement, to, in case it's none of our birthdays, in which case we just want to print the date. That seems a bit of a mission, right? 6 if statements. So what maybe is a better way? There's another statement that we learned that could be better in this case, because this case has so many options, right? There's so many different options. So which statements am I going to use, guys? We also learned it back in chapter 1. When there's too many options for it to just be if, else every time. How do we handle that, guys? What's another way to say options? Could hint at it, but I think you guys should know this. So I'm going to let you either go through the book or something, or think about it a bit. So how would we do this? Instead of going like, so this would be one suggestion, right? I could say, if it is Chris's birthday, okay? If it's Chris's birthday, else if it could be Yusuf's birthday, right, for example. Else if it could be Taffy's birthday, right? Else if it could be Chico's birthday. Else if it could be Sejo's birthday. Else if it could be my birthday. So you see how many cases there are. This is a lot of if statements, right? This is a bit crazy. What's a better way of doing this, guys? Do you not remember? Could be my birthday. else it's no one's birthday.
Hey.
So that is one way we could do this. That's not great though. There's a better way of doing this. What would we call each one of these? We are going to spend time on this because you guys should know this. So yes, exactly. Okay, we're going to use a switch statement. Okay, nicely done, Chris. So we're going to use a switch statement. So we can switch over the date, and each of our birthdays will just be a particular case. Okay, so we can switch over the date. And yeah, so it'll look something like this, right? Case 1 would be like Chris's birthday. And if it's not that, then we'd break, okay? And then we can have like a default case at the end, okay? But we actually need our birthday. So Chris, you answered the question. What's your birthday? Everyone post your birthdays in the chat if you want, and then we can add them to our little app. Including year. You don't have to include the year because we'll just make it 2020 for the sake of our example. But you could. Huh, really? That's an interesting birthday. The 28th of December. Cool. 28th December 2020. Okay, so that's Chris's. So then we'll say label1.text. So label1.text equals happy birthday, Chris. Okay, there we go. And we can go through all of the cases. I'll type quick. Okay. Okay. What I'm going to do is actually just copy paste. Okay, because there is 6 of us. So, I don't know why, but Visual Studio is getting very slow now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll go through all 6 of our cases, or 5. We don't have to include my birthday, I suppose. So the 5th of June, so that would be like 5 June. And we could say happy birthday, happy. Okay, we could also say 23rd August. Okay, so 23 August 2020, happy birthday, Yusuf. We could also say, so 15th of March, 15th of March. Mark, happy birthday. Ooh, didn't double click, okay. And then for me, because Chico didn't send his birthday, I don't think. So we'll just use mine, September 2020. And we'll say, happy birthday, Josh. Okay. Oh, and we need semicolons. I'm going to just add a semicolon to multiple lines at once. If you push Control Alt, and then you can click multiple lines. So I can add 5 semicolons at once like that. Okay. Cool. And so if no one specified their birthday, we'll just say default. By default, we're just going to set label1.text to be just the date. We'll just set it to the date. Okay, just set it to date and then break. Okay, so that's our app. Cool. Got some pretty complicated functionality there now. But let's try it out. We had to get the dates in the correct formats, of course. Okay, so let's jump over to who's closest. Okay, let's go through the list. So if we go to the 28th, you see it says, happy birthday, Chris. If we go to the 5th of June, it will say, happy birthday, Taffy. Happy birthday, Taffy. If we go to the 23rd of August, 23rd of August, it says, happy birthday, Yusuf. If we go to the 15th of March, it says, happy birthday, Tsecho. If we go to the 25th of September, then it's going to say happy birthday, Josh. And if we click on any other date, then it'll just tell us the date. Okay. See. Not bad, guys. So that's our app. Okay, so we linked something to an event. is the main thing. And how do we link to the event? We say plus equals, and then the name of the method we're linking to the event. So this is the event. Its value changed for date time picker 1, and on value changed is the name of the method that we're linking to the event. Not so bad. Okay. That used up quite a bit of time, actually. So that's how we link to an event. We'll discuss that a little bit more when we come back. Let's start going again at 10:05. Okay, guys. Let me send that to everyone. We'll start going again at 10:05. We're on break till then. So yeah, see you guys in a bit. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing quick during the break just to add everyone to the register so I don't forget later. So branch and I think I should call this lecture Desktop Applications instead. Okay, guys, are we back? Wait a little bit longer. I don't know. I think my computer's time is actually a bit off. Because according to my phone, it's still a bit of time till 10:05. But whatever. I guess the break did start according to my computer's time, so not the end of the world. Okay, but yeah, let's get started again. So how we create the sort of functionality of a desktop application is we use events, as we just saw. So that's how we respond to user inputs and actions, and we call the inputs and actions that the user performs, or rather the result that is triggered by the inputs and actions that the user performs, we call those events. Okay, so how we add to an event is we say the name of the event plus equals, and then like the name of the method that we're adding to the event. We can also throw it into like this event handler thing, which we didn't use in chapter 2, but it's just, well, you'll kind of see now why it has to be done, because we don't explicitly create delegates like we did in chapter 2. But the main thing to grasp about this is just why we are using this plus equals. Why are we adding to the event? Why are we not just saying equals? Because more than one thing can be bound to the event, right? Like more than one event handler can be bound to a single event. We call this multicast delegates, okay? Multicast delegates. What do we mean by that? you can imagine if I had another method here, like, so we've got on value changed here. We could also call this birthday output, birthday out or something, birthday out, right? Birthday out. So this outputs your birthday, okay? But like we could also have another method, right? We could also have another method called like, that's maybe similar, that just outputs the date. Let me actually just give you an example of this so that you can see. So if I go back to the designer, sorry, what did we, oh, right, yeah, because I changed the name without changing this. So I'll change this to birthday out. There you go. So I changed the name of our first method to birthday out, okay. You can imagine that, like, what if we had a second label here? So if we had another label, okay, like what if we had another label, like so, label 2, okay, there we go. We've now got label 1 and label 2. And so the first label, like we just programmed it, it'll say happy birthday. But what if we want the second label to just always say the date? To just always say the date? Then we could create, like, we could do it in this method as well, hypothetically, but like you can picture if you're working along like multiple different apps, or if the methods are doing significantly different things, you can picture that like we might want to bind like another method to this same event, right? We might want to bind another method to this date time picker event, right? Like this. And the thing is that this is allowed when we use multicast delegates. You can see that I can say the first event triggers the birthday one, okay, the birthday method, birthday out, okay. And the second method can trigger the date time picker 1 value changed, okay? And so I can change label 2.text over here. Too long date string. Okay. So you can see both of these methods are bound to the same event now. They're both bound to the same event. And because of how because of multicast delegates, because we use that plus equals, this is allowed. Okay, whose birthday can we use? Let's go to the 28th of December. There we go. So you see the first one says happy birthday, Chris. The second one just outputs the date. So both of these methods are running when one event occurs, right? Because we use this plus equals. You can imagine if I just used equals, it won't even allow me to because it is a multicast thing. But you could imagine then like birthday out would be set to value changed. But then as soon as I said equals over here instead of plus equals, it's not going to add this method to the list of methods that must be called when the event occurs. It'll just overwrite it. So then the previous method wouldn't be called, okay? So the reason we use plus equals is because of this multicast delegates thing. So that we can link multiple methods to a single event, basically, is the point. Okay, cool. So that's that. That's the main thing over there. And yeah. So the next thing we can discuss is this idea of inheritance. Let me think. Yeah, we can do it in this order. We can discuss this idea of inheritance. So what we're going to do is just a sort of basic idea of inheritance. We're going to take form 1 and we are going to inherit it into form 2. Okay, we're going to inherit it into form 2, basically. Okay, so that's what we'll do. And yeah, that should work quite nicely to demonstrate the idea, I think. Let me just think quick. Okay, so we're going to create a second form and we're going to inherit the functionality of the first form. Okay. And it's pretty easy to create inherited forms. So you can just say like add new item, and it has like a default setting for inherited form. I need to find it again, but like, let's just find it quick. Inherited form. There it is. So you can see inherited form right there. So what we're going to do, we're going to add an inherited form. We're going to say that this form inherits from form 1. So it will give me a list of the forms that exist inside my application. So form 1 inside birthday app, I'm going to inherit from form 1. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. And you can see that this will create form 2. So this is form 2. And yeah, so, ooh, that's interesting. So yeah, so that created form 2, and interesting. So yeah, that created form 2, and you can see that it. Okay, I am going to delete this because I accidentally double-clicked, which is okay. So let's just go over to initialize components and just remove this guy here. Okay. This.name equals form 2. That makes sense. Okay. Now, what do we immediately notice? Remember when I created form 1? You can see I'm inside form 2 here. I know it says form 1 as the name, but we can just change that over here to form 2. There we go. So you see it's now form 2. You can see that the thing that you should immediately notice is number 1. So this is a new form, right? But the first time we created a new form, the number 1, the size was larger, right? So you can see it inherited the size from the previous form, it inherited the datetime picker, and it inherited label 1 and label 2. One important thing that I want us to note, do you guys see here? So I'm actually going to just delete this quick. Yeah. So do you guys see, let me just ask you like this. From what we know about chapter 2, what's wrong with this? If I'm inheriting datetime picker 1, label 1, and label 2, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with how we've created datetime picker 1, label 1, and label 2 here, guys? If I'm trying to inherit them. Does anyone have any ideas from what we know about chapter 2? So here we're creating something of type datetime picker 1 of time datetime picker, and we call it datetime picker 1. Then we create something of type label 1, and we call it label 1. Then we create something of type label, and we call it label 2. So label, label 1, label, label 2. So that seems fairly sensible. But if I was trying to inherit these, what's the problem? What's the problem with how I've created these guys? No one has any idea? Okay. So guys, the problem is that they're private. Okay. Private means that it's only accessible inside form 1. Okay, that's what private means. So let me ask you this. What is a better level of encapsulation for something that needs to be inherited? If we're inheriting it, what should we make it? What level of encapsulation should we make it? So there's 3, right? There's public, private, and protected. Which one's ideal for something that we're inheriting? Protected. Okay, so protected means that it's only accessible inside the class and in any other class that inherits from that class. Okay, so I'm going to change all of these guys here to protected. Okay, see. So now they're protected. And so now I'll be able to inherit them into form 2 properly. So I'm going to go ahead and say add new item and just add that inherited form again, just so that we ensure that no problems occurred. Okay. Oh, I lost it again. Inherited form. There we go. Okay, there we go. So that's going to create form 2 again. I'm going to change its name once again just to make sure that we can tell the difference between them. So you can see that everything was inherited from form 1 into form 2. Okay. So yeah, the labels, the text, all of that stuff. So now instead of spawning form 1, I'm going to spawn new form 2. Okay. So I'm going to spawn a form 2 and we can see how it works. So I click run. You can see that when I select a new date, it still is working. Let me jump over to the 28th of December. There you go. So you see it still works. Everything was inherited. Makes sense. So you can see that the shape was inherited, datetime picker 1 was inherited, label 1 was inherited, label 2 was inherited, and both of our methods were inherited. Why were they both inherited? Because we changed them to protected. You're right, Chris, that public also would have worked, but the problem with public is then anyone can access it, right? Like anyone. We don't want everyone to be able to access it when they want. We want only things that we still want to keep some level of protection. But they mustn't be totally private. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Cool. So Windows forms are just classes. They can be inherited like anything else, right? And you've seen that now already, right? So form 2, you can see if I jump over into form 2 over here, where we create form 2, you can see it says public class form 2, and then it says inherits from birthdayapp.form1. Okay. This is exactly how we programmed inheritance before. Remember when we created rectangles that inherit from polygons? This is exactly the same idea. This is form 2 inherits from form 1. Okay, so it's exactly the same structure. They're literally just classes. There's nothing special going on here. Okay, we've got a class. The inherited form inherits from the base form. Okay. Inherited and derived forms still inherit all the properties and attributes and methods. So you've seen that as well. We inherited the events, we inherited everything. So we inherit the visuals from the form we inherit from, and we inherit the functionality, okay, like the events and the methods and stuff. So, but to emphasize that everything is inherited, right, like the visuals and the functionality, to emphasize that everything is inherited, we term this visual inheritance, because obviously like the methods and stuff would be inherited, but visuals, it's not like obvious that the size of the form and the color of the form would all be inherited. So to say visuals, to say that the visuals are also inherited, we call it visual inheritance. Okay. Cool. So that's that for visual inheritance. Fairly simple idea. This is the one that you must know. This is the one you must pay close attention to. You have also seen encapsulation now, in that we had to change the type to protected, or change the level of encapsulation to protected. But yeah, the main one is visual inheritance. That's the main one that matters for Windows forms. And like when you're asked questions about this stuff, visual inheritance is the one that you must pay attention to, as you saw previously. Okay, so that's that. Cool. The next thing is this distinction between what they call single document interfaces and multiple document interfaces, because there's lots of ways to sort of handle this problem. Okay. So in order to explain what they mean by this, yeah, I'll explain it first and then I'll show you. Like previously, we've been doing the example first and then explaining. We're going to switch things up with this sort of part. So applications by default are what we call SDI. Okay, so these Windows Forms applications by default are what we call SDI. That means they have a single document interface. And all that means is that the windows are managed by the operating system. And the other way to think about it, these two things basically mean the same thing. The other way to think about it is that there's only one window per toolbar or menu item. Okay, so let me just show you what we mean by that in like the application we just created. So this is a single document interface. Okay, you can see that. So the two ways of thinking about this is, number one, the windows are managed by the operating system. You can see at the bottom here, they're managed by the operating system, and I'll show you what I mean by that now in more detail with like another application. The other way to think about it is that we only have one visual interface per toolbar or per menu. You see this thing at the top here that's holding the minimize, maximize, and exit? That's the menu bar. And per menu bar, we only have one visual interface. Okay, you guys see that? We only have one visual interface per menu bar. So like another example of an SDI application is the calculator. You can see I've got a menu bar, and I only have one calculator per menu bar. I only have one application, one visual interface per menu bar. And you can see if I open up another calculator, you can see that the calculator app doesn't manage the visual interfaces. Windows manages the visual interfaces. You see over here, like I now have two calculators, two visual interfaces, but it's Windows that's managing the two visual interfaces. Calculator can't manage a second visual interface itself. Okay, the programmers didn't program a thing that handles the second visual interface. So as a counter to that, you can see the Visual Studio application itself. You see I have all these tabs open, right? I have a lot of visual interfaces here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 visual interfaces for only one menu strip. The other way to think about it is that I have these 7 visual interfaces open, but the app Windows itself, the operating system, only has one Visual Studio open. The other way to think about that is in the browser, right? Like my browser, I can open up as many tabs as I want, okay? Can open up as many tabs as I want, but there's only one Google Chrome open, okay? So Google Chrome is handling the visual interfaces itself. It has some code to handle the visual interfaces itself, okay? So those are the two kinds of applications we have, a single document interface and a multiple document interface, okay? By default, Windows Forms are SDI. You have to make them MDI. Okay, so in order to make an application a multiple document interface, we do a couple of things. So number one, we have to program a way to handle the window management, to handle the visual interfaces ourselves. But the main thing is that we have to set this thing to true. So is MDI container must be set to true. Now I can ask you this as well, I think. MDI container, is MDI container, what type would that be? So all is MDI container is doing is saying, is the application you are using a multiple document interface application, or is it not? What type would that be, guys? It is just a standard property. What type would it be? Do you guys know this? What type would is MDI container be? Anyone have any ideas? It's answering a yes or no question, right? Yes, Chris, indeed. It is a Boolean. It is a Boolean. Okay, so it can either be set to true or false. If is MDI container is set to true, then your desktop application will be treated as a multiple document interface. If it is set to false, then it will not be set, then it'll be treated as an SDI application, a single document interface. Okay, so if we set is MDI container to true, that makes it a multiple document interface, and then we have to program some way to handle our window management. So let's just do that now. So yeah, we've discussed these sort of examples of MDI and SDI applications. So let's go ahead and just program that up and see how that works. Okay, so cool. So what we're going to do is create an MDI application that spawns form 2s. Okay, basically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new item. This is going to be a standard Windows form. So it's not inheriting from anything. So you can see I've got form 3 now, and you see it's got this big size. This is the standard default size. You can see this form 3 did not inherit from anything. It's its own application. So I'm going to set is MDI container to true. You see it's over here, is MDI container to true. And you can see it says determines whether the form is an MDI container. Okay, so we're going to set that to true to make it so that our application is a multiple document interface. Bam, it's now true. So this is now a multiple document interface application. Okay, so it can spawn other applications inside itself. Okay, great stuff. what we're going to do then, so we have to add like a menu strip, right? You can see all these MDI applications have some kind of menu strip. In Google Chrome, it's very simple. If you click plus, it opens a new tab. If you click X, it closes the tab. Okay, that's a super simple menu strip that Google has, Google Chrome has. But you can see Visual Studios is a little bit more complicated. You can say like File. You've got all of these different options. You can double click things to open a new tab. There's lots of controls here. So we want a complicated menu strip like this. So let's create that. What we're gonna do is, it's still just drag and drop though. So that's pretty useful. I do need to just open up the toolbar again. Tools. Oh, right, yeah, toolbars. There it is, cool. Okay, so what we're gonna do is add a menu strip to our application. So I'll jump over to menus and toolbars, and we're just gonna drag this sort of menu strip into our app, okay. There you go, so we have a menu strip now. Pretty good. So what we need, the first thing is to create a way to add a new window to our application, okay? So we want to add a new window of type form2 into our application every single time you click the button. Okay, so that's the first thing that our MDI container needs, is a way to create these different visual interfaces that are going to be inside the application, okay? So yeah, we're gonna create this new window button first. And yeah, so let's just jump into that. So I'm gonna just create a sort of, what should we call it? We can call it a Windows, okay, window, okay, window. The button will be new window. Okay, I want you to take note of this. So, how should I do this? Can I re-edit it? Okay. So I double-clicked new window to add it to to add an event for it. So like when you click it, something occurs. But what I also want to show you, so I'm going to edit the name here. You can see initially I just typed new window. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to type an ampersand before the N. So I'm just putting an ampersand before the N. Do you see what it did? The N is now underlined. So if I remove the ampersand, you can see the N is no longer underlined. If I put the ampersand in front of the W, then you can see the W is underlined. Okay. So I want to ask you, do any of you know, I don't know, because you guys probably don't actually use these kinds of applications, like applications that have this specifically in them. But do any of you guys know what that underline means? Like when a letter is underlined in a menu item. Any of you know what that means? Or can you guess what it means? That would be even better. What would you guys guess that means? What do you think they're trying to display there by having it underlined? Anyone have any ideas? Why would it underline the N like that? What is it trying to tell me? When I put the ampersand in front of it, it underlines the N. So what do you think it's trying to suggest? It doesn't put an ampersand there in front of the N, it just underlines it. Anyone have any ideas?
Probably for emphasis too.
For emphasis. That's, yeah, so it is emphasizing it, that's true, definitely. But why? It has a purpose. I can tell you that it does have like a real purpose. Okay, do you guys know what hotkeys are? You guys know what hotkeys are?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so that's what this is doing. When you put an ampersand in front of a letter inside a menu item, that means that the hotkey will be that letter, the letter after the ampersand. So if I hit N, it's automatically going to spawn a new window, okay? Like similar, like in Google Chrome, if you push Control T, it opens a new tab. That's because they set that as the hotkey. Okay, so that's what the hotkeys do. Cool. And you can see all of the, inside Visual Studio. just type that again, ampersand new window. Okay, like so. So you can see that inside Visual Studio, they're all underlined as well. So you can see like if you push Control plus Alt plus X, that'll open up the toolbox and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so yeah, pretty interesting. Okay. So now what I want to do next is to say, whoops, feedback hub, interesting. Okay, so what I want to do next is to say, and that is how, so you see all of these are underlined here. That is how they were programmed. You see like the project, the P is underlined, view, the V is underlined. They just put an ampersand in front of it. So Visual Studio was made in this exact way, okay? It was made in this exact way. Cool. So what we're going to do is link something to this new window, we're going to, when you click the new window button, so this is just the event for it, I just double click the new window button. We are going to create a new form. Okay, so child form. Okay, child form, child equals new child form. I'm not sure why it's not able to locate child form. Let's see if it can automatically import it for us. Ooh, did I forget to? One second, guys. Sorry. Okay. No, of course. I'm being silly. Sorry. We're not creating a thing of type child form. We're creating a thing of type form2. Sorry about that. I was being silly. So you can see like form2 is the class that we're trying to spawn. We're trying to spawn like one of, where's our form2 design? We're trying to spawn one of these inside our form3. Okay, so that's what we want to do. And that's obviously called, this is obviously called form2. So we're going to create a thing of type form2, form2 child equals new form2. You're super familiar with what that looks like. Then we're going to set the parent. So the parent of form2 of this child over here is form3 itself, right? So let's see, how can I teach that to you guys? So how do I access, this is going to be maybe a tough question because it might be difficult for you to remember. What keyword do I use to access the class that I am in? So like this class, form3, how do I access that class from inside itself? How do I reference a class from inside itself? Do you guys remember that? What keyword do I use to reference a class from inside itself? Does anyone remember? Back from chapter 2. If we were saying, like, let's say we had two properties with the same name, like one coming from outside the class and one inside the class. How do we determine this class's property from the property that's coming in? What keyword do we use to point out this property instead of that property? Does anyone remember the keyword? I think once I tell it to you, you might hit yourself because I have told you the answer already, actually, like in the question. But how do we reference a class from inside itself? Like this class I'm in, how do I reference it? Okay. Perhaps, so the answer is this. Okay, do you guys remember this keyword? So all this is saying is we're creating a child of type form2. So we're creating a new object of type form2. So basically we're creating one of these guys, okay, a form2. And then we're setting the child's parents. So we're saying, okay, this form2, your parents, like the application that you are in is this. It's form3. Okay, you see when I mouse over this, it highlights form 3 for me. You see it highlights form 3 automatically. So that's what this is referring to. It's referring to form 3. Okay. Ah, Chris, you did ask this. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so there we go. Great stuff. Cool. And then we just have to show the child. Okay, child.show. Okay, child.show. Cool. So I'm going to spawn a form 3 now, and then we can see how it works. Okay, so let's run a form 3. There we go. Let's run this. So it's running. Here it is. This is our form 3. I'm going to click Window, New Window, and you can see it spawns a form 2. I can click Window, New Window, and it spawns another form 2. Window, New Window, it spawns another form 2. Window, New Window, it spawns another form 2. And you can see I can't move it outside of form 3 because form 3 is its parent. That's what we said. So we said your parent, the form 2's parents, child, okay, child's parent is this. It's form 3. So I can't move the children outside of the parent, you see. Like it won't even let me move my mouse past there. Okay. So you can see I can continue go new window, new window, new window, and I can have as many form 2s as I want. And they all work exactly like form 2 used to work. Okay, pretty cool. So that's an MDI application at a basic level. One thing that we can do, so I'll show you this quick because there's a couple of interesting stuff left in sort of that idea. So you can see that when I click new window, nothing changes here, right? Like it's just going new window, new window. It spawns the form 2 inside the window. I can even double click them and like minimize them, maximize them, minimize them. And you see it creates like this menu at the bottom. You see that, guys? And like work with them in the menu at the bottom, maximize them. Okay, so you can do like a whole lot of stuff with them. You can close them, all of the windows you have open. Okay, so you can do some pretty interesting stuff with these, but you can see it doesn't like list them. So in order to list out all of the windows you have open, all you have to do is tell it where the list item is. So actually we can do that fairly simply by jumping over to here and saying, I think we can probably just change it in properties, form 3 design properties. No, okay, I think this is easier to do in the body code itself, but the main thing you have to remember is just the name of it. So here I can say that this menu strip 1 MDI window list item. So to create a list of the windows, I'm just going to set this to I'm just going to set this to let me think quickly. We're going to set this to be the actual menu strip itself. I must just think like, how do I reference that guy from here? Yeah, okay. Window to strip menu item, that's the one. Okay, cool. So now you can see so if I run the application now, when I click new window, it lists them over here. You see, so it's got the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and then the fifth one, the sixth one, the seventh one. Okay, so it just gives me another way to work with them. Okay, so it just lists them out. So you can see it makes sense. The name, it says MDI window list item, and then you just tell it where to list things. So yeah, fairly sensible way of saying that. So that lists them out. And yeah, so the last thing I need to show you guys is the different ways that you can arrange them. So like you can automatically arrange things like horizontally, like how they have it here, or vertically, or anything like that. So let's check that out. So we're going to create 3 different ways to arrange the items. The 3 different ways are cascade, and I'll make the hotkey for cascading to just be C. So I just put an ampersand in front of it. We can arrange the things vertically, okay? And I'll make the hotkey for that just V, okay? So vertical arrangement. And we can make it horizontal. And I just won't put an ampersand in front of horizontal, so it won't even have a hotkey, okay? So those are the 3 ways that we're gonna be able to arrange our items. We're gonna link an event to each one of them to actually set the arrangement to that. So I just have to double click them. So I double click cascade, I double click vertical, I double click horizontal, and you can see I've now got three methods here that are each linked to an event inside form 3. Like when you click the cascade toolstrip menu item underscore click, vertical toolstrip menu item underscore click, and when you click horizontal toolstrip menu item underscore click. Okay, so when you click each one of them, it'll run these methods. Okay, and all we have to do is change the layout. So there's 3 different types of layouts that we are going to work with here. So the first one is this cascading layout. So we can say layout MDI, MDI layout dot cascade. Okay, so that's going to make things cascade. We can make things vertical. So then we say layout MDI, MDI layout. So this one's going to be dot vertical, dot tile vertical, dot tile vertical. And then we can have layout MDI, MDI layout dot tile horizontal. Okay, so those are the 3 ways that we're able to arrange our menu items. So let's see what those do. So I'm going to open up the application again. So I can spawn a bunch of new windows. So let's say 3. So we've got our 3 new windows here. And we can arrange them in the different ways. So if I select horizontal, this is how it arranged. You see it makes them span horizontally across the page. Okay, it makes them span horizontally across the page if I select horizontal. Okay, but let me just sort of minimize them. There we go. So it makes them span horizontally across the page like that. If I select vertical, then they arrange vertically across the page like that. And if I select cascade, then they overlap with one another. Okay, so those are the 3 sort of layouts that you have for these windows. You can arrange them vertically, which you can see is kind of how they've done it here. They've arranged them vertically. That's how they did it in Visual Studio. You can also arrange things horizontally like that. And you can also arrange things in a cascade where they overlap. And you can just move them around how you want. Okay. So that's just how we specify the layout. By the way, just take note of this because it is an easy question to get right if you remember. But they do try to trick you. So remember that it's layout MDI, MDI layout dot, and then either cascade, tile vertical, or tile horizontal. So what they'd give you in like a test, like a multiple choice test, just to trick you, is they would say something like your first option will be layout MDI, MDI layout dot cascade. And the second option they'll give you will be something like MDI layout, layout MDI dot cascade. Okay. So they'll give you those 2 options. Like this will be option A, and this will be option B. Okay, that's what your question will look like. And then there will be 2 other trick answers. Okay. So you guys must just remember that the format is layout MDI, MDI layout dot cascade. It's not MDI layout, layout MDI dot cascade. Okay, it's a very mean question, I think, but they do like asking it. So just bear that in mind. Okay. Cool. But don't worry, I'll give you guys a Mentimeter quiz. It's going to be a difficult Mentimeter quiz, but it'll cover all of these like weird little questions that they can ask about chapter 5, because some of the questions can get a little bit crazy. Okay. Cool. So that's it for applications with visual interfaces. That's all we need to know about Windows Forms. And yeah, so the next thing I want to show you is just briefly how to work with console-based applications. But luckily for us, you guys will already be pretty good at this, to be honest. So if I just jump over to Rex Tester, I don't know why it's not, okay, Rex Tester, there we go. So if I jump over to Rex Tester is done with this exact sort of, Rex Tester is a console-based application, is basically what I'm trying to say. Rex Tester is a console-based application. Well, a console-based application running on the web with adverts, okay? But Rex Tester essentially is just a console-based application. That's all it is, okay? You see we say console.writeLine hello world, and it prints out hello world, okay? This is exactly how we would program the console-based application inside for desktop applications inside chapter 5. So what we're going to do, we're just going to do that, and you guys will see how extremely similar it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up a new project quickly. So file, new project. We're going to open up a console application. I'll call it, console app 1 is an okay name. I'll call the solution MTA Saturday Con, okay, for console, and then we'll just hit create, okay. Okay, so that's going to create our console-based application. Okay, and here it is. So this is the default format that it gives me for a console-based application. So in order to show you how similar this is, I'm going to actually go over to Rex Tester, and I'm going to copy over the code from Rex Tester just to show you how similar this is. Okay, I'm going to remove the those. Okay. So look at that. So this is what Rex Tester gave us. And this is what the default console-based application looks like, okay? I'm going to remove the import statements because they're causing some errors. There we go. So this is the default console app inside Visual Studio, and this is the default Rex Tester app. So you can see the namespace, you can give it whatever name you want. This one's called Rex Tester, our one's called Console App 1. We've got class program. Here we've got public class program. Doesn't really matter, that's chilled. Then we've got public static void main, and then our code here. So let's just put our code here. I'm going to put the exact same code that we ran in Rex Tester, console.writeLine hello world. I'm going to copy paste that into our console-based app, and then just remove the Rex Tester code because we see how similar it is. Okay, there we go. So that's that. I can go to inside on my computer, you can see inside this folder console app 1. This is where our console app is. This is our console app that we just created, this one here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to build it. Okay, so I'm going to build it. So it's just printing out hello world. That's all this does so far. So I'm going to build it. You can see if I go to bin debug, that's what it built. It said console app1.exe. That's what it's created. And I can run this now inside command prompts. Okay, so I'm going to do that. You can see where this is saved on my computer. It's saved in C, users, user, desktop, workspace, MTA Saturday Con, console app 1, bin, debug. That's where console app1.exe is. So I can copy paste this, Control C, that directory. And inside command prompts, just like we did inside the web tutorial, I'm going to change directory into that long directory that we got there, okay? Users, user, desktop, workspace, MTA, Saturday, console app 1, bin, debug, okay? And here I'm gonna run console app 1, okay? And you can see it prints out hello world, okay? Which if we look at what Rex Tester did, right? Rex Tester, you see it just prints out hello world. So the code is identical. Rex Tester is basically just a desktop application running on the internet, okay? Running inside your web browser. That's all it is, okay? So we've already basically learned everything we need to know about desktop applications. You can just write whatever code you can write in Rex Tester, you can write over here, and the only difference will be that you run it in command prompts. That's the only difference, okay? But there is one interesting thing that we have to learn now. So since we've been working with this kind of structure inside Rex Tester, and we've been working with the console-based app structure since chapter 1, right? Like we discussed the structure of a C# program. We have namespaces. Inside namespaces, we have a bunch of classes. Inside classes, we have a bunch of methods, right? And we discussed that the main method is the place where your program starts running, okay? What we haven't discussed before is what this means. What is this thing? Okay, we haven't discussed what that means. That's string, square brackets, args. Okay. So that's the first thing that I have to teach you about console-based applications. We do have this in Rex Tester as well, but it's only in chapter 5 where we actually have to learn about this. So we'll finally uncover what this mystery is. But you can tell me, what is the type of that little thing that's being passed into main? That parameter that's called args, what is its type? What is its type? Can anyone tell me that? We've got this parameter called args that's being passed into the main method. What is its type? So let's see if I did this. Okay. If I was trying to store a bunch of words, guys, so we know that one word would be stored like that, dog, right? String word equals 1. What if I wanted to store dog and cat? What would I have to change this type to over here? What is that type? What do we call it? Just to ensure that you guys are remembering from chapter 3. What do we call it? I want to store both dog and cat. Okay, guys, so if I add this over here, string word, dog, comma, cat, what type are we working with over here, guys? What type are we working with? What do we call this? Yeah, of course. Okay, so it's an array. That took a while, but I'm glad you got it, Chris. Okay, so can always rely on Chris to pull out to get the answer. So on this one, we've got an array of called words. Okay, an array called words. So all that's being passed into main here is an array of strings. Okay, it's an array of strings, and that array of strings is called args. So now let's explore, like, why is this being passed in? So what is this doing? So you can see that when I run console app 1, right, I don't give it anything. I just run console app 1 and I hit enter, right? Like if I said, you can see that it doesn't do anything extra. Every single time I run it, it does the same thing with the same data, right? It has no data. But ping is different, right? So if I run ping, you can see that's what happens if I just run ping. If I just type ping, you can see it outputs all of this. So it's doing a certain thing when I only type ping. But if I type ping and then I type another thing, like I give it a string, like I'll give it a string called google.co.za, then you can see it pings google.co.za. But if I run ping with google.com, then it pings google.com. So how is this string here being passed into our console-based app? And the answer is it's being passed in this array of strings. Okay. So in order to show you that this is just an array of strings, we're going to create a simple console-based app. It's just going to take in whatever arguments you give it, and it's going to print out those arguments. Okay. So let me do that quick. So what we'll do, so we have this array of strings called args. I'll ask you guys this as well, because it is good revision, even though I know that the questions can seem tough. But how would I go over this array? What's the ideal repetition structure for me to go over this array with? How am I going to go over this array? So I want to go over the array of strings that you give it, called args, and print out every single one. What repetition structure will I use to go over an array of strings? Does anyone remember? So we had 4 repetition structures, right? We had those 4 different repetition structures way back in chapter 1. Which one would be ideal for going over an array of strings? I don't know the length of the array. I don't know when it stops, but I want to go over every single item in an array of strings. We can put it this way. So if I say string, I'll create that array of strings called words again, and we'll put in the words dog and cat. Okay. How would I iterate over this array to print out both dog and cat? What repetition structure would I use to go over this array of strings? What's it called? Anyone? Okay, so I'll tell you guys. So it's the for each loop is the ideal repetition structure to use when iterating over a collection. Okay, so we can say for each string, word, in, words, and then we can print out word. Okay, console.writeLine, word. Okay, and so when I build this application, so you can see if I right click, hit build solution, and we jump over here and we hit console app 1, you see it prints out dog and cat. Okay, so that printed out the string, or the array of strings. Now this array of strings called args is exactly like the array of strings called words. Okay, so I can say for each string arg in args, I can remove this array of strings called words. Okay, and now whatever arguments I give it when I run console-based console app 1. So I'll build the solution now. So you can see I can say console app 1, and now I can give it our whole chat here. Like if I just, I can just copy some of the chat from Zoom, and I can just paste that as the arguments. Okay, hold on. That's, because of the enters, it didn't work. But we can say like, I'll give it the last few names of people who sent messages in chat. So it was Chris, Yusuf, Tejo. So I'll type Chris, Yusuf. Okay, and you can see, I didn't rebuild the application. Sorry about that. Okay. Build solution. There we go. So I'll run that again, and you can see it prints out Chris. So now whatever you type, whatever you give console app 1, so if I give it www.google.com, then it's going to print out www.google.com. If I give it that and like another URL, it'll print out that URL. If I give it that and a name, then it'll print out every single thing you give it. It just passes whatever is in here in as an array of strings. And we call those arguments. Okay, we call those arguments. So that's the first thing about console-based apps. I'll show you how to read and write from a text file, because like as we were saying, this is basically just one long text file, right? You can see it's just lines of text. So we can read and write to console exactly how we read and write from a text file, basically. So instead of console.write, you could say file.write, and it'll just work. Okay. So yeah, we'll cover that in next week's lecture. But for now, we can leave it there. Enjoy your weekends, guys. Been a long week for me. So it'll be nice to have a little break.
Thank you, Josh. Enjoy your week.
Yeah, you too, Tuffy. You too, Tuffy. Cheers, Chico. Cheers, Chris. Cheers, Tejo. Yeah, thanks. Thank you for coming. Cheers, guys. I'll upload the recording and stuff. See you next weekend.